patrons with legal questions, learning about the self-help portal. And I'm going to start sharing Scott's slides so that he can present. This is Scott Emery. He is with the Office of Administrative Court, and he is just going to talk with us today about the legal self-help portal. I'm so delighted that he's here. And Scott, I'm going to turn it over to you in just a second. Actually, this is being recorded, and PDF and slides are available. The recording will be available in a few days or so on our website, but you can also access that later. But the slides and PDFs are available through your course module now. And then captions are available a couple of ways, or at least through stream text, I believe. And so if you need live captioning, that is an option. Let me drop that in the chat here for folks. And Scott, I will turn it over to you now. Thank you so much again for being here today.
Not a problem. I have one question just because I'm not used to using Collaborate here. So are you driving the slides or am I driving the slides?
I'm happy to, but if you want to, you can certainly do that. Let me make you presenter here, and
that would probably be easier. There's over 20 slides, so it might be easier if I can have the helm.
Certainly.
Yeah, and one quick note, I'm actually doing this from my home. My wife is on her way from the vet's office with one of our dogs, and we have several, so you're going to hear them bark here in just a couple minutes because they go crazy every time she walks in the door.
Understand. No, that's fine. And so you should now see at the bottom your navigation tools, okay?
I do. And so I just wanted to start off by thanking everybody for their time today. This has been a project that has been a labor of love for me. I've spent about 2 decades in the court system. A good 15 years of that was pretty much on front lines in courthouses, trying to assist patrons. And you often run into a lot of trouble doing that because they ask you legal questions. Look, do we have some folks who maybe can't hear what's going on? I think I just saw a note come up, Hillary. Do we need to check that first?
Yes. My colleague Kim is here too. She and I will troubleshoot. Okay. So you go ahead, okay?
Sounds good. So, having been on the front lines in those courthouses for all of those years, it was very frustrating because people come to you and they have questions, and we're not allowed to answer them because we're not attorneys. We can't give legal advice. There's a lot of misunderstanding about the difference between legal advice, which would be like telling someone what to put in their legal filings, what types of things to argue, what the relevant law is, and providing people legal information. So what we've tried to do with this project is package up a lot of legal information and self-help resources so that people can find the answers to their questions without non-attorneys having to provide a tremendous amount of assistance and risk stepping over that line of giving legal advice like an attorney can do. So what we did is we put together a legal self-help portal. And this is designed to provide people with kind of a one-stop shop to answer their own legal questions. And with that, we'll just kind of jump into the rest of the slides. I want to give you all an overview of the resources that are available on the portal. Some tips for, pointing people in the right direction so that they, a lot of times we've found that people just need they just need to be pointed in that right direction. And once they're able to locate the resources, they are able to do an awful lot of things themselves without having to hire an attorney. And it's not that we're trying to steal any attorney's business. We're trying to help the people who honestly are involved in the court system who can't afford an attorney, who, are going to be unable to have that expertise going through the process. And I don't know how many of you all have had any exposure to the court system, but even the simplest things can be one, very intimidating, and two, just very confusing. I kind of equate it to when I walk into a hospital and everybody's talking and they're using words that I don't understand and they're talking really fast because they're all used to, the lingo and the jargon that goes on. Um, and it's used in that environment. I'm at a loss. And so many people who interact with our court system are in the same boat, with the legalese that gets spoken at them, with words that, those of us from the court system kind of take for granted. So what I'd like for you all to be able to leave here today with is the ability to point folks to this portal, to be familiar with what resources are on it, so that if somebody's asking you, questions where they can find information on this, that you can better assist them with navigating to the portal and finding the resources that may help them. So um, with that, we'll just jump into the slides. These are going to take a second. Okay, so what is the self-help portal? The self-help portal is a website in a nutshell. It is a website that is sponsored by the Kentucky Court of Justice. We put this up about, let's see, it was the end of March of this year. We've had a tremendous amount of interest in it. We've had a tremendous amount of traffic to it already. And it's there to provide legal information and resources to the general public. It's designed specifically for use by people who are representing themselves, self-represented litigants, who require assistance with the legal matters. And what we tried to do is package up a number of resources that will allow people to do their own research. It allows them to create documents, many other things that we'll go over here in the rest of the presentation. So the resources that are available on the portal, and we'll just touch on each one of these right here, and then we'll kind of go in depth a little bit more with each one of those throughout the presentation. By far, the most popular thing we have put on the portal are called A2J.org guided interviews. A2J.org is sponsored by an organization called CALI, C-A-L-I. It is the Computer Assisted Legal the Association for Computer Assisted Legal Instruction. Again, this is kind of a nationwide partnership between law schools, state governments. They've been around, like I said, for about 20 years now. What the A2J guided interviews do is, if you all are familiar with how TurboTax works, you sit down, you log into the website, it starts asking you questions. The user provides, the answers to those questions, and at the end of the session, the application utilizes the answers that they provide to create legal documents that they can then file in the court. All the legal documents it creates are based on legal forms that the Kentucky Administrative Office of the Courts already has out there. So they are fileable in all 120 counties. They will work in any courthouse in Kentucky. Another very popular part of the portal is kyjustice.org. We'll get into that. It's another website. It's sponsored by Kentucky's Access to Justice Commission. We have legal publications. We have access to the regional civil legal aid programs, which I'll share some more information with you all about those. There is a lawyer referral service that's sponsored by the Kentucky Bar Association for folks who might be looking for an attorney. There is assistance with expungement, people getting things wiped off of their criminal record. There is the Kentucky Court of Justice's legal forms library, which has literally hundreds of legal forms that people can fill out. Has access to the KCOJ website and something called Westlaw, which Westlaw is, they collect and disseminate all of the rules of procedure. And we'll talk a little bit more about that here in a few minutes. So we'll just jump into what each one of these resources does and, how people can benefit from it. So the very first thing are the A2J guided interviews. As I was saying, these work a lot like TurboTax. I use that as an example all the time because a lot of people are familiar with how that works. It is a website. People can, from the portal itself, select a particular interview, and I'll show you all this kind of in real time towards the end once we get through the slides. But it allows them to answer a series of questions and the answers to those questions are used to produce legal forms. We've got multiple guided interviews depending on the legal situation that people find themselves in. And the ones we targeted mainly were situations that people find themselves in pretty frequently, and they find themselves representing themselves in things like probate and small claims. And we'll go through the list of what those are. But what we tried to target was where we most commonly run into self-represented litigants. So guided interviews have some great features to them. We're able to pack a lot of legal information into the guided interviews. So people can literally kind of learn as they proceed through the interview about the process, and help answer certain legal questions that they may have along the way, so that they don't have to ask a person those things. Basically, we've tried to really account for as much information as we can pack into these interviews, and people find them incredibly easy to use, very helpful, very educational. So I think your patrons will get a lot of use out of them if they're looking for legal assistance. With A to J, it's very simple for them to select a particular guided interview. This is a screenshot from the self-help portal itself. Each one of the individual guided interviews is listed here by topic. Okay. So you can kind of see the list there. We have affidavit of indigency and request for appointment of counsel. That is for criminal proceedings. We have what's called a petition to dispense with administration. That is a very simple probate for someone who maybe passed away and didn't have many assets. I used to get that question all the time. My family member passed away and they had a pickup truck and $200 in a bank account. How do I do that? That's dispensing with administration. We do have, which has been more popular than I ever realized. Apparently, we have a lot of unhappily married people in Kentucky. So we've got a simple divorce without children that people have utilized a great deal. We have had hundreds of people file for these in Fayette County alone, although these resources are now available statewide. So another big one is a petition for domestic violence protection. A lot of people find themselves, unfortunately, on the receiving end of domestic violence issues, and this allows them to fill out the petition that they need to submit to a judge to get an order of protection. So that can literally be a lifesaver for someone. Expungement is the process of getting something removed from your criminal record. We have a guided interview to fill out the paperwork for a misdemeanor, for getting expunged, a misdemeanor or traffic violation. There are other forms of expungement, but they are more legally complicated, involving felonies. So we kept it simple on the portal. We thought that it would probably be better to stick with the simple stuff and try not to get people into overly complicated matters. Petition for guardian and conservatorship of a minor, motion to modify child support, petition for name change, involuntary hospitalization if you're dealing with mental health issues, a full probate of an estate where someone actually probably maybe had some, family land or house. So that's a more complicated one. Small claims and small claims counterclaim, and then a waiver of costs, which is for filing in civil cases. If somebody wants to ask the court to waive their court costs and any filing fees. So again, I'll show you a little more in depth on how those work once we get done with the slides. But I want to make sure we have time to get through everything and answer any questions as well. So those are the guided interviews that are currently available. That list is expanding, and I want to make sure you all understand that we will be adding to that in the future. So there will be more of those available as time goes by, but they take a little while to develop. So for someone who wants to utilize A to J, it's very simple. They click on the interview that they want on that link on the page that I just showed you, and it takes them into the interview that they require. They can simply agree to the terms and conditions. There's a little checkbox that they have to put. You can see the little small checkbox, the blue checkbox there in the middle, and then they can hit run without an account. This is something that I do want to distinguish. Users are able to make an A2J.org account. It allows them to do things like save their work if they can't get through it all. Things like the dissolution of marriage or divorce petition, probably going to take somebody a good hour to go through. And if they're not able to get it done, creating that user account will allow them to, if they got 30 minutes to work on it, they work on it, they can save their work and come back to it later. It's a very simple registration process. I'm not sure if you can see on the slide, but if they want to register at the beginning, it says register in the upper right-hand corner. And they can just click there, and that will take them to the registration page. Very simple. All they have to do is provide an email address, and they create their own password. Okay. And of course, it asks for their name, but very simple to create that account. So we try and encourage people to do that in case you never know what's going to happen. You never know if your phone's going to ring and you've got an emergency. Maybe you go to print out your paperwork and the printer jams. So we try and encourage people to create that user account with A to J. I know a lot of people have questions about creating accounts and providing information online. We have had our legal department fully vet A to J's privacy policies. The information does not go anywhere. It stays right there on a2j.org. And then the account is only kept for a year from their last login. So security-wise, this checks out. If anybody ever has any questions about that, you could just reassure them that the Kentucky Court of Justice's legal department has vetted that, and the information will not go anywhere other than right there to A to J. So, but they can create the account. If they create the account up front, it kind of has a little wonky navigation. Once they create the account, they have to kind of go back to a list and select the interview that they want. So they just select, click here to select the A to J guided interview. That will bring up a screen that's got, since A to J is a nationwide thing, they have to pick Kentucky out of the list of states. And then it'll give them the list of guided interviews that are available in Kentucky. If they don't create an account, which they don't have to, they bypass all of this. Okay, so it takes them straight into the interview, which picks up here. And just a couple of tips about folks navigating the guided interviews. And you probably can't see the words on your screen because the slide's kind of small, but we provide all of this instruction in the beginning of the guided interview. So it's not like people ought to be coming to you all and asking you these questions. I just kind of wanted you to be familiar with it, in the off chance that, people don't always read the words you put in front of them. We've definitely found that out, and I'm sure you all are used to that as well. So, but if you were to get these questions, it helps for you all to have the information. The main navigation tip with A to J, it is very simple. I've literally put my 11-year-old grandson on this, and he was able to get through it. I know we deal with some folks who are not terribly savvy, and those folks may need a little more assistance. The main thing they need to understand is, I'm sure y'all are familiar with, with a browser on your computer, and there are back and forward arrows. Helps for people to know not to use the backward and forward arrows on their browser to navigate the interview. There's a back button and a next button on the A to J screen itself, and that's the way they need to navigate if they need to go back and maybe change an answer, and then get back to the question they were working on. Other than that, these are very simple to navigate. People generally have absolutely no problem at all with that. So I'm not suspecting you all will get a lot of questions. Like we say here, the A to J interview takes care of the rest. It runs them through the questions. They provide their answers, and then the last screen they will come to will say there's a button that says get my forms, and once they click that, it will assemble their legal documents for them. And we also print out some instructions for them on what to do now that they have their forms. So it provides a wealth of information for them. Here's how the process works now that you've got your paperwork. There is There's one little glitch with it's not a glitch. It's just something that is not available, even though it appears on the screen. If you look under that box that I have circled where it says "Get My Forms," there's something that says "Open Document Preview." That is a function that it works with certain A to J interviews depending on how you built them. Because our documents weren't created within A to J, they were already existing documents. That preview button doesn't work. So somebody may, try and click on that and say, hey, this document preview is working. We tell them that here in the language on this screen, but again, a lot of times people either skim or don't read fully. So, but the button they want is says "Get My Forms," and once they press that button, this is another thing that we do find people sometimes ask questions about. It downloads a PDF document for them, and that appears in the upper right of their browser screen. You can see the screenshot here. It would just click on where it says Kentucky Small Claims Filing, and it will open up their document for them there. And once it opens that PDF document, all they have to do is click the printer button in the upper right hand corner, and it will send that over to the printer to be printed out. So, and again, I will kind of run through one of these when we get done with the slides here real quick, to show you all exactly how that works, because it's kind of neat. So, all right. So, as we talked about before, those A to J interviews are the most popular thing on the portal, but we have a host of other resources available on the portal. This here is just kind of a screenshot of what the portal looks like from the guide interviews down. And we'll kind of go over what each one of these links does and where it takes people. So the next one we want to discuss is kyjustice.org. This is a phenomenally informative website for people who need legal information and need to understand the process and the law surrounding their particular legal issue. This is a collaboration between Kentucky's Access to Justice Commission and our 4 regional legal aid societies that we will talk about in depth a little more here in a few minutes. People can go in, there's a search box, they type in whatever their legal issue is, probate, divorce, and it will help them navigate to that particular topic on kyjustice.org. And again, we really try and encourage people to, not just go create their forms. We've made that really easy for them, but we want them to know and understand as much as they can about the process and about the law. So kyjustice.org is just it's a phenomenal resource for people, and it's not written in a way that kind of talks over people's heads. They did a really good job with kind of making it in everyday plain language that most of us normal people use. So we really encourage folks and ask you to encourage them to go kind of read up on whatever their situation is at kyjustice.org. It will make them better prepared to handle their legal situation. So publications, one of the examples we have is Your Day in Court. This was also done by the Kentucky Access to Justice Commission. This basically tells people, hey, here's what to expect when you go to the courthouse and when you've got to go to court. It covers very simple things like how you ought to dress, how you need to act, whether you should bring your kids with you, or it's got a lot of helpful tips about what goes on in a court proceeding. It has a frequently asked questions section, and it also has something that's really handy, which is a glossary of common legal terms. Most folks who don't deal with the legal realm every day, there's a whole language that goes along with it, and this has a really good glossary of some really commonly used things, so people won't feel like we're speaking Greek to them when they come to court. So good resource for folks there. We mentioned earlier the regional civil legal aid programs. There are 4 of those in Kentucky. Each one covers a number of counties. So when they click that link on the portal, it will take them to the civil legal aid programs page on the Kentucky Court of Justice website, where they have additional links to access each one of those. It gives the list of counties for each one that each one covers so that they know that they're accessing the correct one. And again, clicking any one of those links on that page will put them in direct contact with that civil legal aid program in their area. So civil legal aid programs do wonderful business. They provide they will actually represent people. There are some income qualifications that people have to meet to be able to be represented by any of those legal aid societies. But they do tremendous work in domestic violence area. They handle things like Medicare, Medicaid, and SSI benefits. Help people with housing issues, like if they're being evicted, and a lot of family law resources. In Kentucky, about 80% of people dealing with family law issues do not have an attorney and likely won't be able to get one. So these civil legal aid programs are really a godsend for people who are faced with court challenges. So another great resource for folks to be able to access there through the portal. For folks who may be looking for an attorney, but they just don't know where to turn, the Kentucky Bar Association provides a lawyer referral. There's actually 3 of them based on region, lawyer referral services, to where people can briefly describe their legal issues, and it will put them in contact with attorneys in their location that handle those types of cases. So not everybody who uses our portal is necessarily going to be representing themselves. Some of them may just need help finding an attorney. So that lawyer referral service is another bonus that they can find through the self-help portal. Expungement assistance. This is another very popular thing. People often make an oops in their life, and they end up with a conviction on their record that prevents them from getting future jobs. It can even do things, like prevent people from obtaining credit. So a lot of people are very interested in, hey, when I was a kid, I was in college, I did this dumb thing. Now it's sitting there on my record, even though it's 10 years ago. How can I get rid of that? And so this link will tell them about the process. There are multiple steps to it. I'm not going to get into all of those for you all because it's available here on the website itself. But it will walk them through the steps they have to take. They have to get an expungement certification first, and before they can even file in court. So it teaches them how to do that here on this site as well. Provides them links to be able to register and apply for that expungement notification. They've got to pay $40, I think. But this is a great one for folks who are being blocked in their life by something that they did many years ago that needs to come off their record. So KCOJ Legal Forms Library. This is kind of in addition to our guided interviews. Our KCOJ Legal Forms Library, they can be filtered by topic. So when people go to search, they type in a keyword, or if they know they're looking for a divorce, they put that in the search box, and it brings them to all the forms that we have that pertain to that legal situation. And then the majority of the forms on this site are, I call them smart forms. They're fillable PDF documents. So you can literally sit there and just type your information into them. So it's kind of, I'll say it's not to the level of a guided interview, because it literally is just filling in the blanks on the form itself. Doesn't provide the additional legal information, the process information. But if somebody is, fairly savvy and they just need a form and need to fill it out quickly, those smart forms are really a great way for them to be able to do that. And again, then they would just print it off like they would any other document. So, and that library is constantly expanding. They're constantly approving new forms. So, it changes over time with more and more types of forms available for them. So good to know that that's there as well. The Kentucky Court of Justice website. This is something we just thought we would include there. A lot of people utilize our website already, but there is a host of information on the KCOJ website. Uh, yeah, information about the Kentucky courts, about legal procedures, about jury service. A lot of people get pulled into jury service. How to obtain background checks, court data and analytics, personnel directories, and court programs and initiatives. So there's a great deal of information there on the Kentucky Court of Justice website itself that people can avail themselves to. It also gives them access to, we do a lot of social media content, Facebook, well, I guess it's not Twitter anymore, X, and a couple others. LinkedIn, I believe, is the other one. So gives them access to those social media sites as well if they wanted to, see current events or anything of interest. And then the last thing that we currently have on the portal is Westlaw. As I mentioned earlier, Westlaw gives people access to the rules of procedure. A lot of people don't know this, but we have the law, which is all of our statutes and Kentucky revised statutes. So that's what attorneys go to court to argue, but there are rules about how they have to go about doing that, about what certain paperwork needs to contain, about who needs to be served with a particular document if you're filing it in a court record. So Westlaw provides access to those procedural rules so that people can, not only have their documents, but know what those documents need to contain and how they need to get those filed with the clerk, things like that. So lots of good information there. That's probably going to be one that most people don't access, but I was the chief deputy clerk of the Kentucky Court of Appeals for years, and I had litigants who represented themselves there in the Court of Appeals, which is something pretty impressive for a self-represented litigant to handle an appellate case, but they could quote some of these rules better than a lot of the attorneys I dealt with. So there's a lot of great information there for your savvy users who want to know better how to navigate, how to make their filings compliant with the procedural rules. So those are currently the the resources that are available on the portal. I want to make a couple of caveats here. That the information on the portal and the links that are available are going to change over time. Okay, this is what is there now. We certainly will be adding to it in the future. So, there will be additional guided interviews. There may be additional websites that we find that would, go well on the portal and provide people additional information. So, none of it's 100% set in stone. I would say that the things that are there now will not go away, more than likely, unless we found that, hey, nobody's using this and let's make room for something that people would use more. But there will be additional resources there in the future. Hillary, I'm going to ask for your help because there was two things that you wanted to make sure I mentioned, and I have totally let them go straight out of my head.
No, that's fine, Scott. So one of them is about caching and the computers, if they cached the history.
Yes. Yeah, so I'm not sure what kind of security you all have around your your public terminals in the libraries themselves. I don't know if they reset themselves after each user, but if they do not, especially with things like the A to J guided interviews, because it downloads that PDF document, that is going to be stored unless your computers are set up differently. And this is something you may want to check on, with your tech folks in your particular location. But it is possible that those PDF documents are being saved to a downloads folder. And we certainly want to make sure, because of the sensitive nature of the information that's on those documents, we want to make sure that that downloads folder is getting cleared out. So I know that, our tech people, like we have public workstations that we've put in the courthouse, and they reset themselves automatically every time somebody else uses them or every time a session is ended. So it wipes away all that information kind of as a matter of course. But if you have someone who's utilizing a machine that doesn't have that particular functionality, um, be a good thing to go by every, in between every few users, and just make sure you don't have documents sitting in that downloads folder that somebody else could access. So,
Thank you.
and
The other
Hillary,
one,
yep.
Spanish language. I think there was
Oh,
somebody
yes.
in Spanish.
Yes. So we're currently piloting, and this is only currently available in Jefferson and Fayette County, and it is only available for domestic violence petitions. But we are piloting a Spanish translation service. What that it works. It's pretty neat. It takes them to a website where they are asked the questions on the petition in Spanish. They're allowed to provide their answers in Spanish, and then the Spanish version is whisked off to an on-call interpreter. So you actually have a real person on the other end who does a real-time translation, and then that is sent back to the clerk's office once it is translated over into English. I mention this because if people don't access a particular guided interview straight through the portal, or if they create an account and have to pick from that list of interviews that I showed earlier on the A to J site, they will see two domestic violence petition guided interviews, and one of them says Spanish language version. If they are not in Fayette or Jefferson County, they won't be able to utilize that currently. We are hoping that the pilot goes well, and that everything works, but we've got to try that out first on the ground to make sure before we can send it everywhere. So if you are in a county other than Fayette or Jefferson County, and someone is trying to utilize that Spanish language version of the domestic violence petition, um, please let them know it's not going to work. So they would likely need to go to the courthouse where they have a service called Language Line, and they have people who can help them fill those petitions out in particular. So did that cover the two that we wanted to talk about, Hillary?
That was it, Scott.
Awesome.
Do you want to do
Speaking
questions
of
now?
actually,
Or?
well,
Go ahead.
hang on, because it brought one thing to mind as well when we were talking about the translation services. So when we were piloting these guided interviews at the Legal Help Center that we opened in Lexington, we found that we did get a lot of people who were not native English speakers. Now, the majority of them had a good grasp on the English language. They were able to read and write it. They were able to carry on a conversation. But we also found that, and I'll tell a little story here. I had a lady come in from Iraq. She needed to get divorced. I was assisting her. She was able to navigate the guided interview, but I noticed she was also taking notes as she worked, and all of her notes were written in Arabic. And so we got to the end of the guided interview, and I said, look, there's an instruction sheet that prints out with this interview, and it's pretty. I don't want to say complicated, but it's pretty in depth. And I said, would it help you if I could print that out in Arabic for you? And her eyes got huge, and she was like, oh, that would be wonderful. So what we did is we took our instruction sheet, we had it translated into the 5 most prevalent languages that are requested for legal interpretation across the state. And so when anybody gets to the end of any one of these guided interviews, they can actually select a language to have that instruction sheet print out in. Doesn't change the interview, doesn't change the documents that are produced, only the sheet of instructions, but it's good for people to know that is there, because a lot of people do find that very helpful. So just wanted to mention that while we were talking translation. Not a problem.
Thank you. Well, are you okay to do questions now?
I am ready to do questions, unless you want me to run through a very quick kind of. I can show people how the guided interview works if they want to see that today. And if not, people can go on to the portal and create all the legal documents they want. This is not linked to any kind of electronic filing or anything like that. So it is simply creating the documents. It is not filing. So people can go in and play around with this, and see how it works if they would prefer to do it that way.
Oh, that's fine. I've got the site up, so I'm just going to send a reminder to folks that they can type their questions in the chat, and then I'll open up the site here
Okay.
and let you navigate. I'm going to stop your slides and start sharing the screen here. We got to go through a little different path. Let's see.
That's all right. We'll get it figured out.
Sure. All right. All right. You all seeing that? Is that what you need, Scott?
Looks like it's coming up now. Okay. Oh, you even grabbed the right one. Awesome. So when someone clicks on the small claims interview from the portal, this is where they will land. Hillary, am I able to drive this or?
I think so, but let's see. Again, go ahead and try, and if not, just tell me where to go, and I'll.
Okay. Couple things I wanna share real quick, Hillary. Can
Sure.
you just scroll the screen over a little bit to the right there?
Let's see.
Let me make sure I can't do this. Oh, wait a minute.
Uh,
I think I can drive it, or is that
okay.
just me?
Let's see.
What I wanted to show was over on the right where it says learn more.
Yes.
If you could click that. So, like I was saying, we get to embed all sorts of interesting information in here. So, if you click on that small claims handbook link, Hillary. Try it
You
one more
seeing
time.
it? It's coming up
I'm
for
not,
me, but
it may have opened up in a different tab.
okay. Um, all right. Is it showing now?
There it is.
Okay.
Yeah, so just as an example of good information we're able to embed in these guided interviews, we put the small claims handbook, which talks people through the entire small claims process. So I just wanted to show that as an example of the information that we're able to pack into these interviews that is really, really helpful to people. So, okay, Hillary, you can go back to the other screen now if you'd like,
Okay.
and just X out of that. Just hit the X in the upper right there.
Okay.
Okay.
Gotcha.
And if you click continue, so you have what's called your guide avatar, which is the person standing on your screen, and then the user gets to pick their own avatar if they will. So take your pick on that. And so next screen is we provide instructions on how to navigate a2j.org, how to register for an account. We've included a learn more on registering for an account. So I think you can just hit continue from here. I don't want to read all of these things on these screens to you. Here's where we start giving them information about actually the small claims process. So whatever particular legal situation they're in, we give a good explanation at the beginning. They have to check the box that says that they qualify. And if you want to go ahead and click continue. We also make them agree that this site doesn't provide legal advice, and that if they need legal advice, they need to find an attorney. So you can click continue there. And here's where we get into the meat of the questions that are actually going to be utilized to fill out the small claims complaint. So let's just go with person. We're going to file this against a person and just type a first and last name in there, Hillary. You can use mine if you want to sue me. And if you'll notice, these fields are required, so it makes them put answers in. All right. All right, and click a person again, so the defendant. Okay. So literally, it's just a matter of answering these questions. Yeah, you can make up whatever you want. While Hillary's typing this, I'll tell you all a funny story. So when I was testing our divorce forms guided interview, of course, when you test, you either have to make up wildly crazy stuff or just use information that's familiar to you. And so I was filling out divorce paperwork and using myself and my wife as the participants. And she kind of walked into the room and she raised an eyebrow and she said, something we need to talk about. At that point, I pulled up the domestic violence guided interview I'd been testing previously. And I said, well, if you hadn't beat me up, we wouldn't be having this discussion. So feel free to play around with these. It's kind of fun. If you'll notice the learn more over here, and Hillary, you don't have to click on it, but it's just a link to the Kentucky Circuit Court clerks. This information actually appears on the form itself, so they have to have it and they have to fill it out. Okay. Yeah, either one. This is just informational. If they have a written agreement, we advise them to bring it to court because the judge is going to want to see it. Okay, and so here's the complaint details. And Hillary, you can just type, he took my money or whatever, you know. Okay, and that's plenty. Amount being claimed, I don't know, $1,000, $350. That sounds good. It'll ask them about court costs. That is something that they may want to contact the circuit clerk because they can vary by county, but $100 is usually, and that's fine. You can type words there too. Yep, nope, that works. And then continue. And then here's where I was telling you where we have the instruction sheet. Select one other than English just so we can look at it, Hillary. Just do the drop down. There you go. All right, and so here we're at the end. Get my document. Go ahead. And now open up. It'll be in your downloads in the upper right of your screen, I guess.
Let's see.
Should be a little downward pointing arrow in the upper right of your browser. There it is. So if you'll see, the complaint comes out, all the checkboxes are fully filled in, all the information is there, and somebody can simply print this out. One thing, scroll back up just a hair, Hillary. Nope,
Sorry.
top of the second page. That's okay. Where you're telling the story of what happened. Yep, a little bit further down. There we go. Okay, so where it says plaintiff claims defendant, if you'll notice, there's only so much space on the form, right? So one of the great things that A to J does is if somebody types a book in here, which some people do, they want to tell you the whole history of everything that happened, and it won't fit in the space available on the form, it will automatically create an addendum page that will put the rest of that information on there. So it's not a problem if somebody writes a novel there. But anyhow, that's how that works. And again, we have these for a variety of legal topics. Here's the instruction sheet that Hillary chose to have done in French. So, and that's a quick run through of how A to J works. So, happy to answer any questions anytime you all have them. I know Hillary's got my contact information. Hillary, don't hesitate to share that out. I'm more than happy to take questions whenever, if I can be of assistance. I'm more than happy to do that. So do we have any questions, Hillary, that we want to answer today?
Yes, so Micah has asked, are there any printable publications available online for libraries to print for patrons who have further questions about one or more of these services?
Um, yes. And Hillary, did I get you the PDF document of
Of
of the flyer?
the,
The
yes,
okay. So
yes.
you feel free to share that with everybody. I think if you haven't already,
Mhm.
that will get them to the portal itself. If they have questions about any of the services, they can certainly contact me. Or on the portal itself, there is a phone number where they can call the administrative office of the courts, and they'll just tell the person who answers the phone that they have questions about the self-help portal, and they will route them to the right place. So that information is available at the very bottom of the portal webpage.
And so Scott's referencing a bookmark PDF that he created, and I've got that. It's actually in your course, in the Collaborate course, but I will make it available so it'll be on our archive webinars page, and I can send it to Kim so that he sends it out as well to you all, those who have attended today. Great question, though, Micah. Thank you.
Yes,
Anybody else got
excellent question.
questions? This is a really good time to talk with Scott. He's so please feel free to ask any other questions. I did drop the link to the self-help portal in the chat. So, and I can get all these links to Kim, my colleague, so that they can go out again with your certificate and so forth. Any other questions?
And again, if y'all are anything like me, as soon as we end this webinar is when all the questions will pop into my head. So please do not hesitate. You reach out to me directly anytime. I'm more than happy to answer questions or assist in any way I can.
Thank you so much, Scott. Thank you all for being here today. I will go on and share our, thank you again, Scott. Just appreciate you being willing to do this and take the time. And
You are quite welcome. More than look, if this helps us help people, I'm all about it. So reach out anytime, direct questions. I will assist in any way I can. If we need to do this again sometime, I'm happy to do that as well.
All right. All right. Well, I'm going to share we want to thank also the Institute for Museum and Library Services. I'm going to put that slide up here. I know you all are probably familiar with that. But the Institute Museum and Library Services sponsors this webinar. And if you all know this is being recorded, so it'll be available to watch later. A short link to the survey, I'm going to drop that in the chat here. Oh, Kim's already done it. Wonderful. Thank you, Kim. And so you will be able to get a certificate of attendance in your learner dashboard within a week, as long as you've met the requirements. And so the slides and PDFs, again, will be available later. I just want to thank Scott again. And Scott, I don't know if you were able to see the chat, but we have had some comments. Thank you. And then someone else said this is great information. I wish I had it earlier, some of it earlier today.
We should have scheduled at 8 a.m., Hillary.
Yes. So, but if just want to thank you all again. Thank you so much, Scott. And I'm going to put my email in the chat too. If you don't remember Scott's, you can certainly email me and I will get you connected. So, and I can also send you out the links and so forth too. And you're most welcome, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here.
Yes, thank you for your time. Much appreciated.
I'm going to stop the recording, and but folks, if you have any other questions, don't hesitate to